All right. How's it going, Timothy? We're going to be doing a systems theory in action, like a little overview, and great books by the way, for the for the class. I'm really enjoying the other one as well, Beautiful Boy, and this one is very dense with really good information. So I'm just gonna get to it because there's a lot to do. 10 minutes isn't really very long for contained in the book. So first, I'm just gonna give a lot, just an overview of some definitions and just kind of like from the book and a little bit, I'll have some show notes for some other sites that I kind of looked at to help me kind of with some visual aid for me to like kind of learn a little bit better since I'm usually better in like a classroom setting and talking with people helps me. But so I talked with, my family and they're in the class too, which is really cool. So we're just gonna start with what is systems theory? Like what is it? Right? So on page 6, this is how the book defines it. Systems theory can be defined as a set of unifying principles about the organization and functioning systems. Systems are defined as meaningful wholes that are maintained by the instruction of their parts. So that's the basic definition that it gives you right there in page 6, and it goes into some background stuff. I did some just looked into some of the other background it just mentioned a little bit as well. So like Ludwig von Bert Bertalanffy and J.G. Miller established the foundation of general systems theory in the 1960s and 1970s. Researchers in organizational studies imported the systems metaphor of the living biological organism and key terms pursue a richer understanding how it worked. So systems was an alternative perspective, basically, that from the other kind of linear kind of thinking of the time, and we'll go more into that too, which is some other interesting chapter 3 in context. It goes into some really cool stuff. So the classical management era of organization studies was dominated by new of organizations as machines, where goal was efficiency, productivity, and control. There was one right way. So like for me, like I play a lot of video games, so I like in the terms of like linear, like in that term's like a video game term where it's like you're basically there's one way, there's like you walk down a hallway and then like point A to B. That's the section of that game. You're doing a linear part of the game. Okay, you go to that, you talk to this guy, then you do the next thing. There's no way around it. There's no solving it in a different way. It's like there's just a linear way to beat the game, right? So this is kind of like in this time in history, they're basically kind of thinking more in a linear way, like this is the way it is. But when there's so many variables, as you see, like just in life and systems in general, like you program in a video game too. It's like there's a whole game engine world that can be broken very easily. And just like in these, you see systems like no wonder a lot of us grew up and had problems with broken families because there's so many systems overlapping that it just like it's hard to solve it, right? It's hard to solve the puzzle. So this is what I really like about this book. It's like helping me to think in a different way. Like even though like my recovery has been, to think in a different way. And this is like basically like, we get to the end, I'm gonna explain like some of the points I have about, you know what I mean, like being a lone ranger, right? Like the way that I used to think, kind of really affected me. And so this is it kind of explains it. Like just if you focus on a little thing and very like by yourself, isolated, you're not going to have any support to move forward in your life and reach your potential, basically, right? So a system approach looks at the whole organism to describe and explain how organisms work, multiple ways to accomplish various goals. So like that's what I was saying about the way they used to think in science at this time and how to solve these problems. It was more just regimented, like this is it, this is how you do it. So the system approach is like kind of like you use your tools and like whatever situation it's modular, right? You can like, okay, how are we going to approach this? And so what I like about the systems theory approach is that there's a creative aspect to it. Like I always am thinking about, okay, in my own life, for example, like I kept on like, I got into to like, AA and stuff. And I started like overdoing, like helping everyone, like, and not like, I wasn't able to say no. I was just driven, and I ended up like keep on getting those red flag zones where I still relapse, right? Like I was trying to do good, but then like, and I wasn't focusing on like, okay, I wasn't looking at the meta stuff. Like I was drinking lots of coffee, which is bad for when you first stop drinking or using drugs. I was eating tons of sugar and processed foods. I ended up having gout and all this other stuff, so I had to change. I had to change my diet. I had to look at things from a perspective, from a macro perspective, like in a chart. That I was, I kind of redrew it. So you look at it from like a macro perspective up here, because I literally, was looking at everything just in a small sliver of myself. And like, and then I burned all the bridges with my family and this other microsystem. And I still was talking to my siblings, but we were all using drugs or whatever, right? So that was the inner circle right here. So I added a few things. The inner circle part, that's the most, when you're growing up, this is going to be the people, my stepdad, my mom, my sisters and brothers and stuff. So that really helped me to just draw this out. And I kind of like even made some bulges over here because the macro system is it's like a matrix, it like holds all this other stuff. So we're all affected by all the stuff that's been previous in history, of our family, in general, right? Our cultures. So it's really cool how this book lays it out. It's very dense, but like I just keep rereading it, keep looking at it, right? As I pursue probably getting into family, counseling and stuff like that, addiction counseling. All right, where was I? So I got kind of looking at that. That was cool. Um, and it's also going over like open systems, which is another. So open systems, organizations are open to their environment, permeable boundaries, information and resources flow both in and out. So that's another thing relating to the linearity of a system where it's like this is the answer. Like I don't know, like I'm trying to think what would be a good example. Maybe mathematics. Like there's not really. I mean, there's you got to be really like out there smart to come up with it. Like just basically to give you like this is how you solve these mathematical equations and stuff, right? There's not like a creative way to figure it out. Like for the average person, just you're just learning those concepts and theories. So the open system is a part of it not being linear, right? Of not being like looking at things so closed mind. There's even like a closed minded perspective too. You think about it, like just how you could look at somebody like, hey, this guy just committed a crime. You could, if you have no context, like you can just, or a string of them, and you can't look at like maybe what this guy went through, or like, reasons maybe why. I mean, there are always times where there's people who are just, criminally insane, and stuff like that, but usually there's something that can be done to help therapy and like figure out where it's coming from. So I really like that emphasis on the open system. So also in the open systems, there's exchange with environment is essential for health of the system. Environments are unpredictable. So that's like yeah, like why it's a modular system because it's like we don't the kind of stuff you got to go through or like we're gonna deal with people. It's always like you know you, I'm sure like he went through a lot of stories too, but like I mean I'm sure there's just like there's not one. I mean, there's similar stuff, but it's like there's so many variables, right? And like when you do this kind of work, like there's just going to be, people aren't the same. There's lots of differences. So we went over that the open stuff. So another thing I really let's see it. I'm gonna see if this is really how many minutes do I got on this already? So with the interdependence, like this is another main key point throughout the book, like a theme, like of like organizations are in a dynamic, interconnected relationship with their environment. So the interconnected, that's a highlight, right? It's like It's all part of a system that's connected together in a web. Like, the sub parts within the system are interrupted, not isolated. The system is made up of interconnected system. The changes to one part of the system directly or indirectly influence the other parts. So it's like a cascading effect or like a domino effect, or something will happen. So even personally for me, like I get triggered over sometimes something that's not even very. I'll do when it's not even like even. It's like you can't control a lot of stuff that happens, right? How you're gonna react to it. So like I sometimes with the air, like I don't know if it's the fall air or I just like I'll be walking around and it'll just bring like it'll smell like cocaine or something like that. It'll bring up these like and I'll start to get triggered, right? Like and it fucks with my emotions. Like for me, I'm past like going I want to go do some cocaine or something, but like it just emotionally the response it gets, and then like other health problems I had. I don't want to be all going. So then I got I had to learn the DBT, like to do the mindfulness techniques and breathing and stuff like that, and to reframe everything and do like positive self-talk, right? And just keep on like coaching myself. Basically, is what I and ended up doing now, like how I help myself. So goals right here for the systems. The goals of the system in a system are contingent and negotiated. So there's some of these terms too. I had to like look up what they meant too, because I was like, I don't know, my vocabulary isn't like this good. So equifinality, equifinality. There is no one best way to organize. All ways of organization are not equally effective. So yeah, it's kind of like finding that sweet spot, or like like as I keep on pursuing a career and getting experience. So in chapter 2, there was some cool stuff on context. This one was on page 15. So not only does system theory recognize multiple perspectives, there is a second concept tied to the idea of context in systems that is equally foundational. The other concept is non-summativity. Non-summativity, a term used to describe the phenomenon that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. So the idea, and it goes on further, it says the idea is not new. It can be traced to the Greek philosopher Aristotle. Non-summativity can be understood through our human tendency to organize phenomena into meaningful wholes. So this was interesting too. It had a picture in the book. It's like one of these pictures where it's like there's multiple like they purposely put in like there's a beautiful woman, and then there's like an older lady if you just look at it differently, her big nose and stuff like that. So I forget the term in art. I do a lot of abstract art. It's kind of like when you see something like a smoke and then you like create in it, you can see like a skull, or you can see stuff in it. So it's kind of like for me, like my mind, like it's a creative mind, and I can recognize that this is something that happens all the time with me. Like I just or like when I was going through early recovery, even years ago, and I went back and relapsed again for a long time, I would go and like I would try to create like it's this that's doing it. It's like it's my family. I had a resentment towards them, and this and that, and I would like almost like go overboard on it. When it was really just I was physiologically, biochemically addicted to the drug, and then like it warps you, it like alters you, it changes you. It like makes you make bad choices and you feel horrible, and it keeps you in this guilt shame cycle. So I wasn't able to recognize that, and so it's like, or like recognize how your mind works. Like if you're not, sometimes like just knowing's half the battle, like they say, just having knowledge. That's why like like when you start learning about stuff, if you assume things, like that's when you're gonna like offend people, and it's gonna like it's just mean. Like it just becomes like, what are you doing? All right, so what do we got now? We got a couple other terms. The feedback. Negative feedback seeks to correct or reduce deviations in the system's processes to reestablish a steady course back in direction of system's goals. And then on the other hand, positive feedback changes or grows the system in desired ways that amplify and enhance the system's current processes. So let's see, what else do we got going on here? We got entropy, which I don't when it comes to like the definition, I think it's like I was looking at it's like super long, and I don't have much